The Exorcist, like many film novel adaptations, is really two experiences pivoted on a central set of plot points. Both of them feature demonic possession of a girl, the stress of her mother, and the challenges of a priest. However, there are notable differences between the two, and hopefully in explaining these I can convince someone who leans on reviews before committing to a read to experience such a classic. Minor spoilers ahead. Obviously, there will be differences in film and novels to appeal to a new sense and make use of new technology. Dorothy's Slippers and Wizard of Oz, artistic changes in Hellraiser's story due to direction with special effects. Practically every Disney film experiences some alteration in its lifetime. The Exorcist is no different. And I'm not just saying this is a bad thing in the least. The film adaptation took a handful of the scenes in the novel and made them more visually visceral, notably the tests run on Reagan and the exorcism itself, adding a spinal tap to the list of tests run, as well as the iconic head twisting scene, which were products of the director's attempts to turn a few heads, metaphorically. Overall, the changes left the question of if Reagan was actually possessed answered quickly in the movie, and logically, the production crew definitely imbued a lot more gore into the film to disturb the average moviegoer at the time. And like the book, it definitely works. Both releases spawned each a separate set of public unease over the content, believing there are actual demonic influences baked into them, something I'll touch on later. And like The Exorcist rocked the public, the events of the plot rocked the character Damien Karras's world. Karras's world. In the book and movie alike. He suffers a question of faith, but it is the book that details his thoughts on whether he believed in God or not. There is even a scene between him and his bishop taken out for the film, touching on how much doubt was in his heart, and how he didn't have the faith required for an exorcism. This struggle mirrored the overall theme in the book on questioning if Reagan's condition was a product of a mental condition, or a demon released from its prison. As a side note, I find it curious how intact the original story was left despite the obvious differences. Now, circling back to what I promised, I wanted to talk about how the book and movie both caused a disturbance in the public's quiet life. See, America has had a fascination with mysticism and the occult since the mid 1800s with tarot, Ouija, palm reading, and fortune telling in general. Even in the 1960s up, things we consider mundane today, like rock and roll, were considered by some works of Satan. I recall a story of the Exorcist book being believed to be a satanic Bible that caused a woman to throw it into the river, only for her husband to pull a prank by leaving a waterlogged copy in her drawer a week following. The director of the movie said one of the best things that could happen is if the Pope denounces it, since the whole direction was to run against the Catholic censorship. Unfortunately, the church held their horses on their Rotten Tomatoes review and left us with only a negative review over its encouragement and believed exorcisms were common. That said, some priests who also reviewed the film called it immature for not owning up to humanity's capacity for evil and instead blaming an outside source. Now, I want to say The Exorcist, both book and movie, is a classic in horror. I cannot not recommend them. Not without looking like an idiot. But I also want to say the novel is a fresh experience if you have seen the film 1 or 100 times, or even if you haven't even once. Overall, I urge you to pick up the book. It isn't a chore to read, and it's great if you enjoy supernatural horror like I do. There's even a sequel to it, Legion, if you've enjoyed your time.